Zelensky, I will say this, he wants to settle now. He's had enough. He shouldn't have allowed this to happen either.
No.
You know, if he's no angel,
Right.
He shouldn't have allowed this war to happen. Putin shouldn't have done it too. I mean, I'm not blaming only one. Putin shouldn't have done it. He shouldn't have done it, and it has to stop.
President Trump pushing for an end to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He has given my next guest 100 days to help broker a deal. And here to talk about it is retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, Special Envoy to Russia and Ukraine. You did have some back and forth a little bit between Putin's people, Zelensky, Trump, all trying to figure out, like, could this actually come to an end? You're at the helm. How do you rate the chances?
Hi, Dana. Thanks for having me. I think it's going to come to an end, and I think President Trump's the only guy who can do it. You know, I talked to him earlier this morning, very early, and we talked a little bit about the strategy going forward and how that's going to play out. But he's absolutely right. He's talking about stopping the killing and stopping the carnage. Look, just as a couple of examples, you look at the major cities like Mariupol, which is totally destroyed, a city of 500,000. Think of a city like Denver or Atlanta proper. That's like 500,000, totally destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of casualties on both sides. You know, just Ukraine alone, they've lost more soldiers in 3 years than we lost in the entire Vietnam War and Korean War combined. So he understands the carnage and the destruction. And last September, when they were at Trump Tower with Zelensky, he said it's time, and it is time to end it. And I think he can do it when he gets the dialogue going. And I think but the most important thing I think everybody needs to understand, Dana, it's not going to end kinetically. What I mean by that, it's not going to end by killing each other. This is going to end, and he said this yesterday when he was at Davos, when he made the comment to the people there, that the key role of not only diplomacy, but economics as well. Let me just use one example, oil. You know, the price of oil right now is probably, when you look at Brent or WTI, the baseline pricing, it's about $78 a barrel. So Russia's getting billions of dollars of money from oil sales. What if you drop that to $45 a barrel, which is basically the baseline break-even point? That's what he made the comment yesterday when he was speaking to the people in Davos. And this is where the president comes from. He comes from it economically, and he comes from it diplomatically, talking to the North Koreans or talking to the Chinese. And that's how we're going to finish this thing off. It's not going to be done by killing each other. That's not going to work.
I want to play one thing from President Trump about that meeting with Zelensky and what Zelensky told him. Watch here.
Did President Zelensky tell you that personally?
Yeah, sure. He's ready to negotiate a deal. He'd like to stop. He's somebody that lost a lot of soldiers.
So Zelensky cares about that. Does Putin care enough to come to the table?
Well, when he was talking about soldiers, I don't think the Russians do, because that's how the Russians fight. They fight an attrition fight. Look, this is a nation that was willing to lose 700,000 killed in 6 months at Stalingrad in World War II, and they just throw troops at it. So the president comes at it differently. He understands the killing. The killing has to stop, but he approaches warfare differently, and he looks at economics as a piece of that warfare. So when you look at Putin, you can't just say, well, stop the killing, because candidly, that's not their mentality. That's not how they do things. So you have to approach it a different way. And the president fits into that. You know, unlike Biden, who made the comment, you know, as long as it takes as much as it takes, that was a kinetic fight. We're going to give them all this military equipment to keep killing them. Well, I mean, that's an important piece of it. But there's other pieces that are just as important. And I think the president understands that. And I think he's going to drive to that point. And I have great confidence that he can actually bring this to a conclusion.
May I ask you one last question? Mark Thiessen, a Fox News contributor and Washington Post columnist, joined up with General Jack Keane, who I know you know very well. And they have a piece today that says America must continue to arm Ukraine without U.S. taxpayer dollars. One of the suggestions would be to let Ukraine use frozen Russian assets to buy U.S. weapons. Is that on the table?
Well, that's a discussion piece. That's always part of it, because you have all these options, and you want to present the President of the United States with multitudes of options so he can pick which one he wants to go with. But I think we've always talked about it. We've talked about this repeatedly, of using Russian frozen assets to do that, to buy U.S. arms. I mean, that is one piece of the puzzle that needs to be discussed, and it's going to be on the table with the President to talk about, but it's not the piece that is going to solve this. But it's an interesting point, and it's worth discussing, Dana.
I'm sure that you're not short of people recommending their own ideas, and I'm sure you have your own. Please come back and visit us. We appreciate you having time for us this morning.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.